To say I'm a fan of Joe Rogan's podcast is an understatement. I listen to it like 3 hours a day, 2 to 3 times per day.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
My entire life has become shaped around what Joe talks about on the podcast. And it turns out I like myself better when I'm being like Joe instead of being like myself. And I have the podcast to thank for that. Oh, that feels good. I soared alpha brain like I'm an intelligent Scarface. Peak alpha flow state, bro. Look into it. Joe taught me that the purpose of my life is to conquer my inner bitch. I do that by using the same kettlebells Joe uses. They help me get my calluses up to a JRE standard, and thus I excel at inner bitch conquery. I eat elk and jalapenos 3 times a day, a recipe from the Roganator himself. Joe also inspired me to start bow hunting elk. I haven't gotten any yet. I probably need to get some arrows and go out into nature or something. Anytime Brendan Schaub's on the podcast, it feels like a homecoming to me. In about every 3 episodes, I get that homecoming. Yeah, I'm into jiu-jitsu. I roll. I don't have my blue belt yet, but I do have ringworm, so I'm well on my way. I learn more about jiu-jitsu hearing Joe talk about it than I do from my actual classes. I also don't take any classes. Yeah, I do Sober October. Dude, every year Joe, Ari, Bert, and Tom do it. I'm always in. Since getting into the JRE life, I'm all about the float tanks. Relax hard or go home. But because I'm not rich as balls like Joe, I don't have my own float pod at home. So instead, I just use the bathtub and add a little bit of table salt to it. Practically the same thing. I no longer have a job, which is helpful because I can be more fully dedicated to listening to the podcast. I got fired from my last job for watching the podcast on my phone while I was working. They said it interfered with my ability to be a lifeguard. When Alex Jones is on the podcast, I get severely entertained and frightened. It makes me feel like everybody's out to get me. I even stopped trusting myself. And the guy doesn't communicate in English. His is a language formed out of incoherent, angry, tangential noises. Easy to follow. Do I watch every UFC event? You bet your black belt ass I do. I love listening to my boy Joe announce. Listening to him describe moves I don't understand in a way I also don't understand helps me comprehend MMA way better. I'm also dramatically disappointed anytime Dominic Cruz is announcing instead of Joe. In those cases, I just switch over and watch Joe's fight companion instead of the actual fight. Listening to Joe discount the whole field of chiropractic not only entertains me, it also inspires me not to go to the chiropractor when my back's hurt. I don't think Joe would approve. Instead, I just hit the JRE approved cannabis. That way I can't feel what I'm feeling. And then presto, my back pain is gone. Until I'm not high anymore. My main hobbies outside of listening to Joe Rogan's podcast mostly consist of doing the same drugs that Joe talks about doing on his podcast. The cannabis helps me not be able to form intelligent sentences, and the mushrooms help me think I'm a tree swimming through time, space, motion, and the DMT helps me freak out and think I'm being visited by aliens. Speaking of aliens, I've got 3 words for you. Bob Lazar on Joe Rogan's podcast. Thanks to Joe, I know for sure aliens exist because I watched with my own 2 eyes Bob Lazar, who's never seen an alien with his 2 eyes, look into Joe's 2 eyes and tell him that aliens exist, which also probably have 2 eyes. JRE exposes the truth. I started doing stand-up. I was inspired after spending thousands of hours listening to Joe and his comedian friends talk about their journeys in stand-up comedy. What I like least about it is doing it. What I like most about it is being able to talk about it with my friends. Just like Joe. Because you can't trust CNN or Fox for unbiased political information, I get all my political intel from Joe. What I like best about seeing Bernie Sanders on the show is that Bernie didn't die of old age on air. I think it would have hurt Joe's ratings. Yeah, I'm gonna get sleeve tattoos. I think they'll represent who I am as a person really well, because Joe has them. I got inspired to start my own podcast where I talk about Joe Rogan's podcast. I think my listenership will grow pretty fast. I love sitting in the sauna listening to Joe talk about being in the sauna. I have mine set for 230 degrees. Joe says that's too hot for him, but I want to prove I can do it. Without a doubt, the biggest accomplishment of my life is when Rogan had on Elon Musk. He landed the big fish, and then Elon smokes pot with Joe. Best moment of my life. It was a giant leap for mankind. It was also a joy to watch Elon speak with the elegance of a socially awkward teenager. The biggest adversity I've been through in my life was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson interrupt Joe for 2.5 hours straight. I love listening to Jordan Peterson on the show so I can feel dumber. Yeah, getting AirPods changed my life. Used to be when I was listening to the podcast with wired headphones while hooking up with a girl, the cord get all tangled and I'd be like, lady, I wish you weren't even here. Hearing the guys talk about how Ari drugged Bert was kind of dark. Nothing funny about it. It also gave me the idea of doing the same thing to one of my friends, so I did. Turned out he nearly died because of a dangerous interaction with a medication he was on. It was hilarious. This is my dog. I named him Marshall. The JRE listening community is very diverse. It consists of two groups, men and people who aren't women. Oddly enough, since I've built my life around Joe Rogan's podcast, women seem to be 100% not interested in me. I have no idea why. Maybe I need bigger kettlebell calluses on my hands. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications so you can be annoyed each time I post a new video. And also check out my website for my live comedy show tour schedule, linked in the description below.